I met three-time Oscar-nominated author and filmmaker Steve Barber a dozen years ago at an Aero Club of Southern California where he attended and I happened to sit next to him. I was intrigued about his tireless work in bringing a 90-year-old veteran, Leon Cooper, back to the island of Tarawa where he served in World War II. So I invited him to speak at the Breakfast Club and he did so 10 years ago. Now he's back again. Steve was born in Syracuse in 1961 and lives in Santa Monica. After attending college in Virginia and Kentucky, he headed west to work on films and television shows for several years, then took a break and founded venture on various cruise ships during the 1980s. His first novel, Below the Waterline, is a tale of love on the high seas that's the big seller on Amazon. Returning to Hollywood in the 1990s, Steve took his $50,000 worth of camera equipment to make a try at filmmaking. His first film, Return to Tarawa, is an award-winning documentary that led Congress to pass legislation to bring home MIAs from around the world. His second film, Unbeaten, is a story about 31 paraplegics who took their wheelchairs 267 miles in 6 days between Fairbanks and Alaska. Its purpose was to raise the profile of disabled athletes and disabled Americans. The success of Unbeaten and Return to Tarawa has enabled his Vanilla Fire Productions to grow into a full-service documentary and commercial video production house. His work ethic and PR background has enabled him to raise funds for Until They Come Home and The Carrier, a film about the first basketball game ever played aboard the nuclear aircraft carrier Carl Vinson. He was granted by the Navy exclusive filming rights for this story. Steve is now on a quest to build monuments for all the Apollo missions, including celebrating American ingenuity at the highest level. He has raised money to build crew monuments for Apollo 11 and 13, and he will be unveiling their first female astronaut monument at the start of next year at the Aviation Museum in Long Island. Let's welcome Steve Barber back to the Breakfast Club as he tells us about his latest adventures, journey to build the monuments for the greatest stories in the world. Steve Barber.
Good morning, Breakfast Clubbers. This is awesome. I mean, this is really awesome to be back here, to be able to start with the national anthem. I just got back from filming a movie across America, and America is intact. I mean, I went through 17 states, and it's all very patriotic, and we're still intact. Maybe not so much here in New York, but America exists, and it certainly exists here. So this is quite an honor. Once again, my name's Stephen Barber. I was very fortunate to sit, and life is all about serendipity. I could have sat next to anybody, but I sat next to this man. And that has led me on a journey back here to the Jonathan Club. And just give you a quick review. You guys did a nice piece. I'm a award-winning documentary filmmaker. I was able to work with a World War II veteran we lost about 4 years ago, Leon Cooper. And Ed Harris was his neighbor. And they became great friends. And I asked Ed if he would narrate this film, and Ed absolutely said, not a problem. That started me on this journey to bring home. And I've done a lot of things at Vanilla Fire Productions, but to be able to get congressional legislation passed. And that was just kind of the byproduct of the movie. We just made the movie to tell Leon's story. But what happened was the energy from that film, once it got out on Military Channel and Discovery Channel, resonated with millions of veterans around the country. And one veteran was so upset out of Alderman Balser, a guy named Joe Balser out of Chicago. He was so livid that the Marines were still buried on this island. They never came home, that he went to Congressman Dan Lipinski, who passed legislation in 30 days, which is unheard of. And they called me up and said, would you be willing to go back to the island of Tarawa again to help bring home these Marines? I was like, I couldn't believe it. So that's how it all started. So the great thing about storytelling, and I know Joe is out here, another documentary filmmaker, as you know, stories become something bigger once you get them out there. You don't own them anymore. They belong to the people. So that's how it all started. Coincidentally enough, I was here 10 years ago and I took a selfie with Neil Armstrong in the Reagan room back there. I think that's how this all started. I brought some show and tell stuff. These are a couple of monuments. I work with the greatest sculptors in America out of Nebraska and Loveland, Colorado, the Lundin sculptors, and I'll talk more about them. But these are some of my films. I've been really, really fortunate. I didn't get in this to make money because there ain't no money in documentary filmmaking unless you're Michael Moore or what's the guy from PBS, whose name escapes me? Ken Burns, yes. But the rest of us just want to tell stories. We just want to tell really great stories about it. And that's really what my company's become. It's become about American exceptionalism at the highest level. And anytime a story can come to me that I can inspire people, that's what I go for. I just literally just filmed a documentary. I just got back. I was 17 days on the road filming some great patriots going across America. And I believe my company in documentary films is the most noble company in America, not because I set out to do that, just because that's organically what it has turned into. So these are some of my films. You folks can go to vanillafire.com. And if anybody's interested, a lot of them have been on many networks, Hulu, Netflix, what have you, but they're pretty much all off now. But I could send you links if you're interested. So let's start. Buzz Aldrin is a good friend of mine. I had been speaking to Buzz for years about telling his story, doing a documentary. And I don't know if anybody's ever met Buzz, but Buzz is a pretty crusty guy. He's tough to get him to do anything. I finally convinced him after years, raised the money. He got in a lawsuit with his children, of all things, and everything was shut down. So I could not make this movie. And I was just so bummed out because my father worked on the moon buggy back in the 60s. I grew up in Detroit. And, Apollo was in my blood. When I was a kid, we had heroes. They were getting on rocket ships and going to the moon. And, I was going to tell that story. So I literally went out on a bike ride in Santa Monica. And I had met Jim Irwin in 1974, who was commander of Apollo 15. I don't know whether Jim came to me through a memory 50 years earlier. He literally came to me and said, build it, they will come. It was my field of dreams moment. I couldn't believe it. I thought, I want to build 12 monuments. It was a year out from the 50th anniversary. So I rushed home figuring, well, there's got to be monuments to the Apollo mission. There was one. There was one monument of Harrison Schmitt behind the Piggly Wiggly, like in Texas. I was like, I couldn't believe it. So I went after NASA pretty hard. I called them. I said, I want to build 12 monuments. They're like, that's not what we do. And I was just about to hang up. And they said, well, why don't you try the Kennedy Space Center? They have more of a theme park feel there. Maybe they'd be interested. The guy who picked up the phone, his name was, I should remember, but I don't because I'm getting early Alzheimer's. So the guy who picked up the phone was a Marine. I'm pitching him. He said, are you Steve Barber, returned to Tarawa, Steve Barber? Couldn't believe it. I said, yes. He goes, okay, you're the real deal, even though that's the real deal. And he said, we can't build 12 monuments, but we're building this moon garden. If you can build the crew of Apollo 11 and you can get it funded in the next 4 months, and get it to us in 9 months, we'll do it. Couldn't believe it. That never happens. When does anybody ever say yes? That never happens, right? So that's what happened. So I went out and I found the money. I know Dan Gilbert, who owns Rocket Mortgage, from the carrier. So my whole life has been my journey, which I'm sure everybody can understand. They have the same thing happen to their life. So something that happened to me 10 years earlier would be the catalyst to get this beautiful monument made. So what you're looking at here is the clay. So it starts in clay. And I've abbreviated all of this because we only have 35 to 40 minutes. But I wanted you to see how they start this out. And we gave Buzz the flag. I originally wanted to put the flag like it was on the moon, but George Lundin, who's this incredible sculptor, and his brother, they said, Buzz has kind of had this deal of being number 2 his whole life, right? So let's give him the flag, give him a little bump, right? So that flag weighs 140 pounds. So that was their idea. That was terrific. Now, here's when it goes into bronze. And like I said, this is an 8-month process, but I wanted to kind of expedite this. So it goes to clay and they cut the pieces up. They cut off the arms, which just destroyed me. When they were starting to cut it up, I'm like, no, don't cut it up. They're like, we know what we're doing, Barber. Don't worry about it. So they cut it all up and then they take the clay and they turn it into a bronze. It's about a 7-day process for each monument. So here you're looking at the bronze piece. And this is all in Loveland, Colorado. And these people are the heartland of America. Their father was a glider pilot. in World War II. They're from Nebraska, but they live in Loveland, but they are Americans, patriots, true and true. And what you'll see here is the finished bronze pieces. And I couldn't have been prouder. I mean, you have to understand, I just came up with this on a bike ride. How could I possibly do this? Well, my story for you folks is all the good ideas have not been taken. All right. There are millions of ideas out there that haven't been taken. I can't believe that I'm the guy that was able to build the monuments to the greatest story in the history of the world. I have no idea why I was that guy. But what that taught me was anything and everything is possible. I'm not a man of means. I live in a rent control apartment. I make $100 grand a year. I do okay, but I'm not a wealthy man. But I had a wealthy idea. I had an incredible vision, and I shared that vision with some really smart people, and they bought off on it. They liked it. So anything and everything is possible. There's nothing that's impossible. And I did not know that until I started doing this. You'll see Dick Butkus in the background, by the way. These guys, George went to the University of Illinois. So they built a 12-foot Dick Butkus, which we just unveiled, which is fantastic. George also built Red Grange, which is at the University of Illinois. And when I say these guys are the best in the world, I mean they are the best in the world. And I did not know that. I had no idea they were the best in the world. I just knew they had built Jack Swikert, who you see here, and I'll tell you that story as we move forward. But we got to unveil, and I got to spend the day with Dick Butkus, he was the most humble guy in the world. He did not want a monument. It took 10 years to convince him to build the monument. This is the shameless Stephen Barber selfie. But I got to tell you, at that moment, the reason I took that picture, at that moment, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I just couldn't believe I was able to do this, come up with this idea, find the $750,000, get NASA to put it like these monuments right now. There's a little kid looking at that monument right now, hundreds of them every single day at the Kennedy Space Center, saying, I want to be an astronaut. I never knew the power of monuments. I had seen them like all of us, but I never really knew the power until I watched them being built. And I saw the love and the compassion and the amount of artistry that goes into this. And I actually went to the Kennedy Space Center last year because they've been up for 3 years now. And there were 50 kids in front of my monuments taking selfie, and when I say my monuments, those monuments belong to the world now. So it's fantastic. Now, this was really cool. This is our good friend, Buzz Aldrin. Buzz, I convinced him to get on a plane and come check out his monuments before we went to casting. And he couldn't have been nicer. He flew out on his own dime. I offered to, get him a plane ticket, first class, a limo, the whole deal. He's like, nah, I'll come out. So he came out, and we had the townsman. That's George Lundeen there. And I was paralyzed. I mean, I was just sitting there going, here's the second man on the moon. And most of the sculptures, most of these guys have passed away. So George was so excited to actually be talking to somebody that was alive that he was building. So actually, Buzz gave him a lot of advice on if you ever get to the Kennedy Space Center, you'll see it looks like there's dirt. So what Buzz said is he jumped from the second rung when he was on the moon. So when Neil went all the way to the base because he gave the Tranquility Base speech, one small step. But Buzz was like, the heck with that, I'm jumping. So when he jumped, and to hear him talk about the moon mission like it was like going to a golf course, so when he jumped, all the moon dust came up on his pants, which you can see at the Smithsonian, and you'll see that's what we did here. It looks like it's dirty, but that was the effect that Buzz came. Buzz says, you should make my pants dirty, because when I jumped from the second run, and when I picked him up at night from the Denver airport, and as we're coming into Loveland, he's pointing to the moon in my Range Rover, right, that I rented. He goes, yeah, Steve, those are the coordinates. That's where I landed, right there. If you look left and you look right, and I'm like, oh my God, I mean, who gets that? I mean, I got the second man on the moon telling me where, his ship landed. It was just really surreal as it is, as I think about it now. Yeah. Once again, this was a little corny, but I'm like, hey, Buzz, can you look up at yourself? And he takes direction well. But it's such a cool photo to see, him looking up at his likeness, which he really thought was tremendous. He was actually I think he was very humbled by the fact that we were able to do this. And so, and we gave Neil's kind of the point guy there, and he's looking up. and Mike Collins, who I met Mike right before he died. Mike died about a year ago. So kind of neat. I love that picture. Here's all of us. To the left is Joey Boehner. Joey is the heir apparent. Joey kind of wandered in. He's 28 now. He wandered into the Lundin Studios 15 years ago, wanted to be a sculptor. And that's exactly what happened. So George, you'll see Mark is next to him. He's the master sculptor. That's obviously Buzz Aldrin. That's George Lundin and myself. So Joey is actually, George and Mark will tell you that Joey is actually better than both of them. He said he wandered into our studio. We've turned him into a sculptor. He is now the heir apparent to the Lundin sculptors. And I suggest that everybody, if you get a chance, go to the Lundin website in Loveland, Colorado. They are extraordinary, extraordinary artisans. And to be able to be partnered with them on not only Apollo 11, but Apollo 13 and Sally Ride is my high honor. It's just, it's unbelievable. I still can't believe it's happening. This is okay. So this is the finished patina. I want to give you guys a close up. This that takes about a day and a half for them to get the bronze and the color right. But you can see the perfectionism. I mean, it looks incredible. It's like lifelike. So that's Michael Collins, as you can see, and that's called the patina process. And that's it's literally drying in the back. And I love. In fact, when I met Michael, I said, well, what do you think? He's like, I was pretty handsome. And, because he's such a humble, I was like, yes, Mr. Collins, you were absolutely very handsome. That was a great, and to be able to, 50 years later, to be able to interact with my heroes that I grew up with, I'm like, who gets to do that? It's really quite extraordinary. And this was my journey in Los Angeles. It started out as a filmmaker, now I'm a monument maker, but I've made documentaries on all the monuments as well. Once again, the shameful selfie, but this was the day that we unveiled. It was a huge event. We had 1,000 people at the Kennedy Space Center. So that's the moon garden. So when I called the gentleman at the Kennedy Space Center, he said, I'm building this moon garden, which I knew nothing about. He said, I've only got room for the crew of Apollo 11. If you can make it happen, you build it, we'll put it up. So that's what he was talking about. So everybody who goes to the Kennedy Space Center now, they go right to the monument. It's the first thing they see. And they were literally going to put it out back. But when he saw how extraordinary the monuments were, they decided to put it out front. So all of this just happened after. It had nothing to do with me. All I did is I came up with the vision, but people much, much smarter than I am and much more talented than I am took it to a much higher level than I could have ever thought of. And here's the finished piece, which is you'll see the dirt on everybody's pants. So I think that's kind of neat. And that came up from Buzz Aldrin came up with that idea. I love the fact that Buzz is holding the flag. That flag weighs about 140 pounds. So the monuments run about 700 pounds each, but Buzz is about 840. And we took those across country on a bit of a cross country tour. Rocket Mortgage, Dan Gilbert, who was kind enough to fund it. We stopped at a couple of baseball stadiums and let people come in and see it. But like I said, I've never had children, so these are my children. Welcome to the crew of Apollo 11. So what you're looking at here, so this is a full size of this. This is Jack Swikert. How many people have seen Apollo 13? I'm assuming most people have seen it. Kevin Bacon played the Jack Swikert character. Jack unfortunately died of a horrific cancer in 1982, but he had just gotten elected to Congress. So they came to the Lundins and said, listen, we're going to put him in the halls of Congress forever because he didn't get a chance to serve. So that, coincidentally, the reason I was able to build these monuments and come up with this is because 15 years ago, I did a movie for the Montford Marines, which were the first African-American Marines in the Marine Corps. And I did it pro bono. I didn't really have the money. They asked me to come out and shoot something. So when you give, you get. So little did I know 15 years later, when I came up with the idea, I had seen this in Statuary Hall and I remembered. And so I Googled, I'm thinking, okay, NASA has signed off on this. Who am I going to get to build these monuments? And I remembered this unbelievable Jack Swikert, which is in the Capitol. It's been there 25 years. And if anybody's been through the B terminal in Denver, it's also been at the Denver terminal for 25 years. So when I called up George Lundin, I got real nervous because NASA had already told me yes. So I'm thinking, well, it's, everybody's so proprietary. He's probably going to tell me no, And I called him up and I said, hey, my name's Stephen Barber. I've got this great vision. Would you be interested in building the crew of Apollo 11? And there was this silence. And I'm like, oh, here it comes. It's going to say no. And he just said, Mr. Barber, I've been waiting 25 years for this call. He's like, get it done. And I couldn't believe it because he was really surprised that nobody had ever called him to do like duplicates of Apollo, because so many millions of people see it every year, where he gets calls all the time for football, baseball. They make more Abraham Lincolns than anybody else in the country. Abe Lincoln, they have thousands of Lincolns all over the country. So that's how it started. And this is the duplicate of Jack, which you can see is extraordinary, which they have in one of the local museums as well. So this is, like I said, we didn't have a lot of time. Here we have in the background, this is the finished Apollo 13. So it's just to backtrack real quick. So after I finished Apollo 11, I wanted to keep going. I went to NASA. I said, let's build all the Apollo monuments. Well, NASA is a very challenging organization. They just said, we're good with Apollo 11. That was it. They were just, so I reached out to Jim Lovell and I went to go interview him. And in the interview, I said, would you be interested in Apollo 13 monument? He said, well, it's a good idea. And he was best friends with David Granger from the Granger Corporation. So I dropped the package off for David, and Jim's got an extraordinary, he's probably the most historic resume astronaut still alive. I mean, he was Gemini 7, Gemini 12, Apollo 8. Well, what most people don't remember though, Apollo 8 was the most significant mission. It was the first men to the moon. They circumnavigated the moon and they set up everything for the other Apollo missions. Without Apollo 8, there couldn't have been an Apollo 11 through 17. Unfortunately, Jim didn't get to land on the moon, but it's all worked out pretty well as far as the Apollo 13 story is probably known more than anything. So that's Jim in the background with Fred Hayes. And you'll see the helicopter, which was not my idea. That I actually reached out to Sikorsky to see if they'd give us a real helicopter, but NASA was like, no, we can't put a helicopter in here. But they came up with a 40-foot painting of a helicopter. So that's the Iwo Jima. And that's that very famous picture where they're getting off the Iwo Jima when they're back home. And I'm sure we all remember, I was 10 years old. I remember my family holding hands and praying for the Apollo 13 astronauts. I remember it vividly. And that's why those guys came home, because there was no walls up back then. The entire world prayed for those three guys to come home. And I know 100% that's the reason they came back home. Here's the unveiling. Now, this is at the Houston Space Flight Center. We've got legends. You got Gene Kranz in the middle, who Ed Harris, coincidentally, Ed's my friend. Ed, narrated for me. He played Gene Kranz in Apollo 13. The other two, these other gentlemen are legendary flight controllers as well. And of course, Jim Lovell on the end and Fred Hayes on the other end. And what people don't remember about Fred was the first person to ever fly the shuttle. So Fred, 1977, flew the shuttle, first astronaut to ever fly. He did the test flight. So Fred is an incredible pilot of his own right. Once again, as proud as anybody could be, couldn't believe I was able to pull this off. I mean, Apollo 11, now Apollo 13. And as much as I like Apollo 11 because it's so historic, I actually prefer this monument. There's something about it that's just so beautiful. And it gets me emotional because, like I said, that was the moment that we brought the astronauts home, that exact moment. And I really love that. And it's at the Houston Space Flight Center. 1.5 million people a year see that, and 2 million people a year see the Apollo 11. There's a great picture of Jim, and that's his daughter. In fact, both of his daughters, I was asking them, if you remember, they're both hippies in the movie. And he's like, oh yeah, Ron Howard got all of that right. I was able to tell Ron what outfit to wear. I told Ron I needed to wear a headband. So it was really interesting to be with the daughters and telling us, about how the movie was made and how they got to be part of it. And they actually were able to get Ron Howard to, they basically dressed themselves in the movie. So it was kind of neat to spend time with his family. It was really, really, really lovely people. And Jim's pretty happy. Jim's, he was very excited to have that done. Once again, Jim Lovell and Fred Hayes at the unveiling. And I was terrified because I got the money. I got the first installment about a week before before the crash, before we all were shutting down and we were locked down. And I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna lose this. But then I kind of came to grips with it. I'm like, well, it's Apollo 13, right? I said, there's a really good chance that we're going to lose this mission. And luckily, David Granger is a man of his word. He goes, no, Steve, we're going to keep building it. The COVID's going to lift. We'll we'll figure it out. And so I was very fortunate all the way through the COVID. I was able to build this monument and get all the funding, which was just a miracle in and of itself. I just, I really thought they were going to say, okay, we're not going to do this now, but they stand-up company. They did what they said they were going to do. A story, if anybody, you guys are in the Palisades, they did a really nice story for me in the Palisades post there, which was very, very nice of them. So I just threw that in there. And I love this picture. Now, I had a problem with the folks at NASA. Like I said, NASA's a bit problematic. So they would not let me come in with my film crew, which was devastating as a filmmaker to be there with your film crew and not be able to go in and film it. And they cited COVID and they said all kinds of crap, but anyway, excuse my language. So I was devastated, but I was able to, this picture made up for the whole thing. And I wanted to go in there with a dolly and shoot Jim. And I had this whole vision, but luckily I got this one picture, and this picture says it all to me. I mean, here's Jim Lovell looking at himself, and he got teary eyed. I could feel the emotion from him. So I just think this is an incredible picture. And I took it on my iPhone. I'm not Ansel Adams, that's for sure. But I think the picture is very powerful and it tells a great story. And I was really lucky to get that. So I didn't even realize I took it until after we left the event. When I saw that, I'm like, okay, that did make up for not being able to shoot what I wanted to, but it was certainly a great picture. And this is actually just going back to Apollo 11. I shot a documentary, and if anybody would like to see it, I haven't sold it. It's still a work in progress, but it's really good. If anybody can go to my website and email me, I'll send it to them if you go to vanillafire.com. And this was the backdrop that the Rocket Mortgage put together. We had a big truck. We drove it across country. So once again, kind of a proud papa there. I was very excited to get that done. And I put together a compilation. I'm out. I want to build all the Apollo monuments. Let me take that back. I'm going to build all the Apollo monuments. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. It's, just trying to find people that believe in American exceptionalism is a little challenging. But I'm working with Charlie Duke right now. Charlie Duke was the 10th man on the moon. Charlie is 86. He's the youngest Apollo astronaut. So we're going to build Apollo 16 somewhere in Texas. Charlie's down in South America right now, but I'm going to go out and meet with him in about a month. And he's already given me the okay. So I'm excited to be working with Charlie Duke on Apollo 16. And that's going to happen whenever I find the money. So $750,000 for these monuments, which is not a lot of money to put your name on the greatest story in the history of the world. But at the end of the day, it is a lot of money. So just finding those choice people that want to be part of that is what I do every day. I get on the phones and make a lot of phone calls. Here's the whole team. A lot of Jim's family, Fred Hayes' family, the sculptors, and once again to be able to build Apollo 11 and Apollo 13. And I still can't believe it. It's really kind of interesting to watch all these pictures again because you forget about it. It's been 2 and 3 years, but every time I see the moon, it kind of reminds me that I had a very small part to play in that, which I'm very happy about. Now, this is Amelia Earhart. I just wanted to kind of show you who the Lundins are. How are we doing on time here? We're okay? 5 minutes, okay. Amelia's sitting in a closet because Kansas can't get it together. They can't figure out how to get her in Statuary Hall. It's all political, right? But they've had it built for 3 years. So she's beautiful, as you can see. I mean, that's as good as it gets. Only 2% of the monuments are female in America. 8% are cats, dogs, and horses. 89% are white guys, okay? That's the way it is. I'm trying to change that because women give us all life. I think we can do better. There's many, many incredible women in this country that certainly deserve to be memorialized. So I'm working on Sally Ride as we speak. In fact, Sally Ride is completely funded and we're building her as we speak. But I just wanted to show you the genius that is the Lundins. And once again, I'm the visionary. I can't draw a stick figure. I have no talent in that realm. But the great thing is if you have an idea, there's somebody sitting next to you that can help you execute it without a doubt. This is the first female Latina F-35 female pilot in the world. Joey Boehner, the young kid that walked in, he did that in his backyard. I mean, he's that good. And they just put that up at the Air Force Academy, right across from the Air Force Academy. I was out there just a few days ago, but it's absolutely, and here she is with her son, and he's playing, that was his vision. to have the sun and then the little kids playing with the plane. I mean, I think it's just absolutely amazing. And there's like, when I say there's only 2% of the monuments are women, less than 0.7% represent any sort of diversity whatsoever. So I'm hoping to change some of that. I'm working on trying to build the Hidden Figures, if any of you've seen that movie as well. So here's the plaque. I was able to get Leroy Mitchell, who's a great patriot. You folks would love him. He is a Jonathan Clubber, without a doubt. He owns Cinemark Theaters out of Texas. Great guy. So he gave me half the funding. And then Mark and Melissa Matson, more incredible patriots. And this never happens. Mark was on Fox with me on Maria Bartiromo, and I didn't know who he was. They were throwing to this guy. I had no idea who he was. And I spoke to him and he said, hey, listen, I'd love to help you build Sally Ride. So these two folks gave me the money. We are building as we speak. Sally's going to be 7 feet tall and she's going to be holding a 4-foot space shuttle and looking up to the stars. It's going to be fantastic. And it'll be the first female NASA monument in history. And it'll be at the Cradle of Aviation Museum in Long Island. And you're all invited. Everybody in June, come to New York and we're gonna unveil her to lots of fanfare. Another picture of my heroes. I mean, these are my heroes. These are guys that got on rockets for 29 grand a year and went, to the stars, and they did it well, and they did it bravely, and they did it patriotically. And my last shot, this is the Beatles of sculptors. Right? It's Stephen, Joey, Mark, and George. And once again, to be able to be in their light, to be part of their team is extraordinary. And I'm very, very fortunate. But I'll just leave you with, if you have an idea, you can do it. It's just nothing can stop you. Anything and everything is possible in this country. That's why millions of people are dying trying to get here. We are the luckiest people on this planet. Everyone in this room, how extraordinarily fortunate are we, right? Well, I know that. I wake up every morning. Gratitude is my friend. And I want to thank you guys for letting me share this story. And I appreciate your time today. Thanks.
For the eyes of the world now look into space, to the moon and to the planets beyond. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Legacy. Everybody has a legacy. Michael Collins had a legacy. Buzz Aldrin had a legacy. Certainly, the first man on the moon had a legacy. Neil Armstrong. I mean, there's 7 billion people on the planet. We're all a global village now. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're in Pakistan, Timbuktu, or Sioux Falls, South Dakota. You too can have a legacy if you really, and I mean really put your mind to it, and you have a dream. Why are we here today? Where are we? We're in Loveland, Colorado at the Lundin Sculpting Studios. Master artist and sculptor Mark Lundin directly behind me. I'll tell you why we're here. We're here to celebrate the greatest technological achievement in the history of mankind. Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin, a close personal friend of mine. 3 of the bravest men to ever explore the heavens. When I started the company Vanilla Fire Productions, it seemed to me as if noble storytelling just didn't exist. That's what's led us here today to this incredible project that you see behind me. The opportunity to create and build the monument to the greatest technological achievement in the history of mankind is beyond anything I ever thought of until I thought of it. America's a great country. If you have an idea, you believe in that idea, you can make that idea happen 100% every single time. Failure is not an option. Legacies are lost if they're not tended to. I can't really explain to you why Vanilla Fire Productions, along with Lundin Sculptors, are the ones to spearhead this incredible monument of the crew of Apollo 11, but we're honored to do so. Welcome to the crew of Apollo 11, to the Kennedy Space Center for the 50th anniversary of the moon landing.
Fitted together with a precision better than the finest watch, carrying all the equipment needed for propulsion, guidance, control, communications, food, and survival, on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body and then return it safely to Earth, re-entering the atmosphere at speeds of over 25,000 miles per hour, causing heat about half that on the temperature of the sun, almost as hot as it is here today, and do all this, and do all this, and do it right, and do it first before this decade is out, then we must be bold.
Thank you, Stephen. We have a few moments here for Q&A. If you can go ahead and pick out who you'd like.
Oh, do I get to just pick somebody? You in the blue jacket, my favorite singer. Go ahead.
It's really impressive. I'm curious, at 10 years old, you felt this, you watched the moon landing. Did you carry this idea through high school, college, and through your life until it happened?
I didn't. I mean, I'd love to tell you that I did, but what happened was when I met Jim Irwin, Jim, and I highly recommend everybody check out Jim died about 20 years ago, but he had an organization called High Flight. It's a Christian organization. And when you go to his website, which is still his wife and family run it, it says it was more important that Jesus walked the earth than man walked the moon. That was his message to the world. So he was proselytizing to me at the time, but I didn't know it. I was 12 years old. I was 11 years old. But I can certainly tell you that he planted a seed that germinated with me 50 years later. But I didn't, the one thing is I had a space scrapbook that I lost. You know, I grew up in Detroit, and every Detroit Freeman, every Detroit paper, I had a full page of every single launch, and I've lost that. And my wife says I'll get it when I go to heaven, but I want it now. But yeah, so yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, one more time. Oh, it's gold and bronze. The original, the suits, they're made, you know, I don't know what they're made out of. I think it's a very strong nylon, but I'm just guessing. I don't have the makeup of that. Yes, sir. I saw that in the back. Yeah. I did, and I've tried. Actually, this is my fight. Okay, so the Apollo 8 capsule is at the Museum of Science and Technology in Chicago. Perfect. That's where Jim lives, right? So I contacted the woman there. No, thank you. We're not interested. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm going to give you this $750,000 monument complimentary. We just want to put it right next to the Apollo 8 capsule. And she said, no, but they're putting Marvel and Star Wars in there, right? And I'm like, so they've lost their way. I can't, this is my fight. And then I even went over her head, and I went to which didn't go over very well. And Jim's like, Steve, you know, one monument's enough, you know, so I don't want to do anything to upset Captain Lovell, but it should be built. I need to find another location. Well, that's the great thing about it. That was the whole pitch. They're all still alive. It's the only intact Apollo crew. Anders, Lovell, and is it Borman? Yeah, they're all still alive. So I said, you know, just say yes. I'll find the money. This will be so amazing for your museum that we'll have the last Apollo crew, but you have to care. That is really the hardest part about what I do. It's not about the money. Everybody's got $1 million. Money grows on trees. It really does. You got to care. If you don't care, It doesn't matter how much money you have. So that's really my fight. And I try to convince people to care, but I've done it, I've done it 3 times now, but I can't make this woman care. But you've just got my fire up. I'm going to call her right after this. Make her care. Yes. Yes, sir. I knew Gino. He was 17. He's actually got a great documentary. You should all Google it. It's called The Last Man on the Moon. It's terrific. I mean, it's really, I knew Gino quite well. Gino liked to have a good time. What most of the astronauts did. Yes, sir.
Where did the Vanilla Fire also, who funded your first 6 or 7 documentaries? And when you visited 17 states, it's the word patriot.
There are okay, I'm going to start with the last question first. There are hundreds of Trump posters and billboards all over this country. Hundreds, thousands, couldn't believe it. I just drove 17 states. I'm just telling you, America is intact. We've lost 4 or 5 states, but there are 45 intact states that are as patriotic as everybody in this room. I did not know that until the last 17 days. So we are fine. We are broken in some places, but we've been here before. We'll be here again, and we will recover, and we will be better. That is my great hope. Your other question, funding. I'm a salesman. I sold Gandhi his first set of brass knuckles. Okay. I get on the phone and I call people every day, and I'm very passionate. This isn't about money for me. I make a living. I pay my rent. There's no money in this. I mean, I don't care about money. I mean, look what I've been able to do. Money shmoney. I could die right this second at this podium, and I left a legacy for other people, which to me is become, when I was telling your tech guy back here, the reason I'm standing in front of all of you is because I helped a guy in a wheelchair 15 years ago, a guy that just kept coming at me, said, can you help me get some money? And I said, no, I'm busy. I'm doing the Steve Barber book and the Steve Barber movie. And I'm sorry you're in a wheelchair. That's horrible, but that's not my problem. And then one day I made it my problem. One day he came up to me and I just went, okay, you win. He was me in a wheelchair. The guy just kept wheeling at me, right? And I finally said, okay, I'm going to help you. And the day I got out of myself and stopped thinking about me was the day my life opened up. That's how I became a filmmaker. That's why I'm standing here right now, because I decided to help another human being. It took me a while, but when I did that, my life, and what I've learned is the greatest things in my life that have ever happened to me is because I did something completely selflessly. Like, you can't think about doing something selflessly and hope something comes out of it. That's not how it works. It has to be completely organic. It has to be completely from your heart. Because when I shot that movie for the Marines 15 years ago and I paid for it myself, I saw this. And little did I know 15 years later that, so when you give, you get. That's what these are very simple things that I've learned. One more question, anyone?
Yeah, about Vanilla Fire.
Oh, Vanilla Fire. My wife, I drank lattes. She likes vanilla. It's nothing brilliant. She called me up on the phone one day and said, what do you think about Vanilla Fire? And I said, well, it's a great name. I'm sure it's taken. So I went to GoDaddy. It wasn't taken. So there's nothing real genius behind it, but it wasn't my idea. It was, all my good ideas are really not my own. I just I see these and I try to execute them. But once again, you guys are America. It's great to be here. You're all patriots. I'm proud to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. I might have you come back up here just for a second. Wonderful to hear your story, and hope you enjoyed your time with us this morning. And wonderful story of putting your dreams and ideas into action. And as a token of our appreciation, the Breakfast Club would like to give you this book of Notable Jonathans and Jonathan's Heritage, which is graciously donated by the Jonathan Heritage Foundation.
Fantastic. Thank you. What do I got to do to get a button?
Join the Breakfast Club.
Okay, here we go. Okay, I'll be back in a couple of years. So
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. In closing this morning, a quote from each of the Apollo 11 crew. Michael Collins on Looking Down at Earth. I really believe that if the political leaders of the world would see their planet from a distance of, let's say, 100,000 miles, their outlook would be fundamentally changed. The all-important border would be invisible. That noisy argument suddenly silenced. From Buzz Aldrin. One truth I have discovered for sure, when you believe that all things are possible and you are willing to work hard to accomplish your goals, you can achieve the next impossible dream. No dream is too high. And Neil Armstrong on challenges. I think we're going to the moon because it's in the nature of the human being to face challenges. It's by the nature of his deep inner soul, we're required to do these things just as salmon swim upstream. In conclusion of these three quotes, clear your head, dream, and then challenge it head on. This meeting is adjourned.